They said I should be more like him. Smarter, louder, better. But they never saw what happens when the quiet one finally decides to stop being invisible. I was the extra, the helper, the guy who carried the ladder while someone else climbed it. Not because I lacked ambition or heart, but because, somewhere along the way, I got used to being the second choice. Maybe even thought that was where I belonged. My name is Jacob Warner, and for most of my life, I was the shadow behind my brother, Mark. He was the star, the firstborn, the gifted athlete, the natural charmer. Me? I was the one who remembered birthdays. The one who stayed late to clean up the messes nobody noticed. The reliable one. Every family barbecue, every school event, every job I ever had. Mark was the one people remembered. People would light up when they saw him. "You're Mark's brother?" They would ask, smiling wide. Like that alone explained who I was. And I would nod, smile back, say something like, "Yeah, he's great," and swallow the bitter taste before it could rise. I was the one who helped him move 6 times, built his deck, fixed his old computer, even co-signed his car loan when he wrecked his credit. No thank you card, no gift, no speech at his wedding. Just a pat on the back and a casual, "You're the best, Jake." Even at work, that pattern followed me. I worked at a mid-sized marketing firm in Indiana. I was not flashy, not the guy cracking jokes in meetings. But I hit every deadline, took on extra projects, trained the new hires. Still, when it came time for promotions, it was always someone louder, someone bolder who got the bump. And every single time, I told myself the same thing: it's fine. Not everything needs to be about me. But it was not fine. Not really. You know how people say humility is a virtue? Well, for me, it became a hiding place. I convinced myself that staying quiet made me strong. That being overlooked meant I was selfless. That letting others shine was some kind of moral high ground. But if I am being honest, deep down, it hurt. Being invisible chips away at something in you, slow and quiet. You stop raising your hand. You stop dreaming big. You stop asking for more, because somewhere along the way, you start believing you do not deserve it. I never admitted that out loud. Not even to myself. Until that night. The night everything shifted. It started with a phone call. Late. Unusual. Mark's name flashing on the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something told me to answer. And what I heard on the other end, what he asked me to do, changed everything. "Jake, I need your help," Mark said, his voice tight and panicked. Now, I had heard that tone before. Usually meant he screwed something up and needed a cleanup crew. And guess who always showed up with gloves and a smile? He launched into it fast. Said his daughter, my niece, had a big school event the next day, some regional science fair, and he could not make it. Some emergency business trip. His wife, Kim, had food poisoning. "You're good with kids," he said, like that was enough to justify what he was about to dump on me. I stared at the wall while he talked. Same beige paint I had never gotten around to changing. Same shelf with the broken photo frame from our childhood. Him, front and center. Me, off to the side, half in shadow. "You want me to go in your place?" I asked. "Yeah, man. It's just a couple hours. Her presentation's already done. She just needs someone there, so she's not alone. You'd be doing me a huge favor." That line. "You'd be doing me a huge favor." I had heard it so many times, it might as well have been my middle name. I said yes. Of course I did. Next morning, I showed up to the school gym, still wearing my work clothes, holding a coffee that had gone cold in my hand. I found her, Emma, standing by her trifold display board, looking like she was trying real hard not to cry. I put a hand on her shoulder. She blinked up at me, surprised. "Uncle Jake?" she whispered. "Yeah, kiddo. I'm here." Her little face lit up, like just me showing up meant the world. And something about that, about how low her expectations were, how genuinely happy she was just to not be alone, it hit me hard. Because I recognized it. That same hollow hope I used to feel every time Dad said he might come to my piano recitals. Every time Mark promised he'd help me fix up the old treehouse, then never showed. Emma gave her presentation like a champ. She had built this clever water filtration model out of soda bottles and gravel. She was smart, sharp, way more creative than anyone gave her credit for. And when she won second place, I clapped louder than anyone else. Her teacher came up afterward, smiling. "You must be her dad." I almost corrected her, but then I stopped. That is when it happened. Something cracked open in me. Something I had been holding shut for years. Because for the first time, I was not standing in the wings. I was right there, front and center. Not for praise, not for applause, just to show up. And that feeling? It was real. It was solid. It was mine. But when I got home that night, something was waiting for me that made it all 10 times more complicated. A letter. Handwritten. From someone I had not spoken to in 12 years. The envelope was thick, plain, no return address. Just my name, written in that sharp, slanted handwriting I used to recognize instantly. I stood in my kitchen for a minute, holding it like it might explode. 12 years. That was how long it had been since I had heard from her. My mother. Last I knew, she had moved to Arizona with her new husband, some smooth-talking real estate guy she met at church. After Dad passed, she barely looked back. I stayed in Indiana, took care of the estate, handled the funeral, the bills, the boxes. Mark showed up for the service and then vanished again. Mom cried through the ceremony and got remarried before the headstone was even weathered. And now, out of nowhere, she was back in my life with this letter. I opened it slowly. The paper was thick, like the fancy stuff you use for weddings or guilt. The first line stopped me cold. Jacob, if you are reading this, then I have decided it is time you know the truth. That sentence. It sat in my gut like a stone. She wrote about things I thought were long dead, the family business, the inheritance, the years she spent pretending we were just one big happy family. Except it turns out, it had never really been about family. It had been about Mark. Mark had been in line to take over my grandfather's contracting company, Warner & Sons. But here was the twist. Apparently, I was the one my grandfather wanted to take the reins. He had left behind a letter of his own, one that was never delivered, because Mom intercepted it. She wrote, and I swear I read this part 3 times, that she did not think I could handle the pressure. She said I was too soft, too careful, and Mark had the kind of drive people respected. So she gave the letter to Mark instead. Let him believe he was chosen. I felt like I could hear blood rushing in my ears. Everything suddenly made a twisted kind of sense. Why Mark had the keys to the company right after Grandpa passed. Why he always seemed so certain that he was the legacy. It was a lie. A lie built to keep me in the background. And worst of all, I let them. I let them talk me into thinking that playing support was noble. That being invisible was somehow virtuous. But it was not. It was theft, disguised as love. The letter ended with a weak apology. Something about regret and faith and how maybe it is not too late. Too late for what? For truth? For me? For the first time in years, I looked around my apartment, small, quiet, neat, and felt this low, burning anger bubble up. Not rage, not hate, but clarity. I had not just been forgotten. I had been erased, and I was not going to let it happen anymore. That was when I made the decision, quiet, firm, final. I was going to confront Mark. But first, I needed to see what else he had been hiding. Because secrets like this, they never come alone. I barely slept that night. That letter kept repeating in my mind, like a whisper stuck on loop. Maybe it is not too late. Too late for what? For her to clear her conscience? For me to magically feel whole again? I woke up before sunrise, the sky outside still bruised with the color of old ash. I made coffee, stared at the steam rising from the cup, and tried to remember the last time I had done something selfish. Something just for me. It had been years. That was going to change. I drove out to the old Warner & Sons office. Mark kept it running mostly as a vanity project. The real money he made came from his flashy side ventures, property flipping, online consulting gigs, stuff that looked impressive on Instagram. But Grandpa's old business still had the original office space, still had the old desk. And if there was anything left of the truth, that was where it would be. The front door had the same faded logo on the glass. I still had a spare key from back when I helped with inventory one summer, before Mark took over and stopped returning my calls. I let myself in. The place was dusty, half-forgotten. A couple of worn leather chairs, a water cooler that had not been filled in months. Mark probably had not set foot in there since the ribbon-cutting photo op. I went straight for Grandpa's office. The desk drawers were locked, but I knew where the spare key was, taped under the bottom drawer. Grandpa taught me that trick when I was 14. Said, never trust a safe place unless it is one only you remember. That key still worked. The bottom drawer stuck a little before sliding open. Inside were file folders, handwritten invoices, and a thick manila envelope labeled Estate, 2011. The year Grandpa died. I opened it. There it was. A second letter, on that same heavy cream-colored paper, dated 2 days before he passed. And this time, there was no mistaking the name. To my grandson Jacob, the one who sees without speaking, the one I trust to lead with steady hands. My throat tightened. I kept reading. He had left the business to me. Me. He believed in me. Said I was built for storms. He even laid out his reasons. Said Mark had flash, sure, but no patience. Said I had something Mark did not. Roots. That word hit hard. Roots. I had spent so long trying to disappear, I never realized that staying grounded was its own kind of strength. But that moment of clarity was cut short when I heard it. The sound of a key in the front door. Mark. He was early. Too early. I froze. And then I remembered. The letter. The evidence. I shoved it back into the envelope, grabbed the whole folder, and slid it under my coat just as the door creaked open. Mark's voice echoed down the hallway, light and casual. Jake? That you? I stepped out slowly, heart pounding. He smiled when he saw me, all charm and practiced warmth. Man, been a while. What brings you here? I looked him in the eyes, steady now. Oh, you know, I said, just figuring out what was taken from me. And the flicker in his face, that moment where the smile, almost cracked, told me everything I needed to know. Mark's grin returned fast, like he had trained it to never stay gone for long. He motioned toward the office. Want coffee? We can catch up. Catch up? I had just found proof that he stole a future that was never his, and he wanted to chat? I followed him in, acting like I had not just found the loaded folder tucked under my jacket. He poured 2 stale cups from the ancient coffee pot, handed me one, and leaned against the desk like he owned the place. So what's going on? He asked, voice casual. I watched him closely. Got a weird letter from Mom. That made him flinch, barely. But I caught it. A twitch in the jaw, a shift in posture. She said Grandpa left me the business. I added slowly. Said there was a letter. One you saw? One I didn't. He set the coffee down, still smiling, but it looked more like a mask now. You really believe that? That she just forgot to mention it for over a decade? She didn't forget, I said. She hid it. Silence. I took a step closer. And so did you. He exhaled through his nose, rubbing the back of his neck like he was trying to summon some patience. Jake, come on. I kept this company alive. You really think you could have handled that back then? You didn't even want it. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You never asked me what I wanted. He shrugged. Look, I get it. You feel cheated. But I had to make a call. You were always. He trailed off, but I already knew the ending. You were always second. Always quieter. Always easy to push aside. Say it, I told him. Just say it. You thought I wouldn't fight back. He met my eyes finally. For once, the mask dropped. You never did. That one hurt. Because he was right. Until now. I nodded slowly. You know what the worst part is? I spent years thinking that made me noble. That being small made me strong. But it wasn't strength. It was fear. Mark stayed silent. I set my coffee down untouched. I'm not afraid anymore. I turned to leave, and he called after me. What are you going to do? Drag this into court? You think that changes anything now? I looked over my shoulder. No, but it changes me. I walked out without another word. Back in my car, I placed the envelope on the passenger seat. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From adrenaline. From clarity. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, heart still pounding. When the alert popped up, I tapped play on speaker. A woman's voice. Calm. Controlled. A voice I hadn't heard since I was a teenager. Jacob, I need to see you. This involves more than just your brother. There are things about your father you don't know. My stomach dropped. Because my father had died clean. Or so I thought. I sat in the car, phone still in my hand, just staring out the windshield like it could give me answers. That voice, it belonged to Ruth Callahan, my father's former assistant. She worked with him for nearly 15 years. Neat hair, tidy desk, always polite. She disappeared right after the funeral, didn't even come to the service. I figured she retired early or just moved on. Now she was calling me after all these years. I texted back, told her I could meet. She sent an address, some retirement complex on the edge of town. I headed there right away, heart hammering the whole time. My thoughts were a blur. What else had been hidden from me? What did she mean? Things about your father you don't know. Ruth lived on the second floor, corner unit. She opened the door before I even knocked. Same sharp eyes, but she looked smaller than I remembered, not in a weak way, just like someone who had been carrying a heavy load too long. Jacob, she said, giving me a tight nod. Come in. We don't have much time. Her apartment was quiet, decorated like a page out of a 1990s catalog. Floral couch, porcelain cats, the smell of peppermint tea. She motioned for me to sit, then pulled out a thick folder from a drawer beneath the coffee table. She placed it gently on the table between us. That belonged to your father, she said. He asked me to hold on to it. Said it was meant for you, but only when the time was right. I opened the folder. Inside were old receipts, ledger copies, photos I had never seen, and near the back, a notebook with my father's handwriting. Page after page of notes, scribbles, and names. Your father found out something in the last year of his life, she said quietly. Something he never had the courage to say out loud. But he wrote it down. I flipped to the back page of the notebook. That is where I saw it. Mark has been siphoning money from the company. Shell accounts. Under Warner and Son's name. If anything happens to me, look into the numbers. Look into Ruth. I stared at the words, frozen. You knew? She nodded once, eyes heavy with regret. I tried to stop it. I tried to tell your mother, but she refused to believe it. Said it was just jealousy. Said Mark was saving the business, not stealing from it. And the inheritance? I asked. She hesitated, then reached into her sweater pocket and handed me a flash drive. Everything's on there. Financials, memos, emails. I kept backups. I knew someday you might come looking. The weight of it hit me like a punch to the chest. This was not just about stolen dreams. Not just about favoritism. This was fraud. Mark had not just taken my future. He had bled it dry, using Grandpa's name. Using our name. I stood up, folder in hand. Ruth touched my arm before I could leave. There is something else, she said. Your dad, he wrote you a letter too. Not about the business. About you. It's in the bottom of the folder. I found it, tucked beneath the ledgers. I did not read it there. I waited until I got home. Waited until I could sit in the quiet, alone, and open the last words my father ever wrote to me. And when I did, I learned the one truth I never saw coming. He knew everything. Even the part one had kept hidden since I was 17. I sat on the edge of my bed with the letter in both hands, afraid to open it. I had no idea what it would say, but I already felt stripped bare just holding it. That envelope weighed more than any lie I had ever carried. My father's handwriting was unmistakable. Neat block letters. No curves. The kind of handwriting you get from drafting blueprints by hand for 20 years. The kind of writing you cannot fake. I opened it slowly. Jacob, if you are reading this, then I did not get the chance to say these things out loud. That is on me. I was not good at feelings. But I watched. I noticed. And I knew more than you think. The paper trembled in my hands. I knew about the night you were supposed to leave. The night you had packed your bags at 17 and planned to take the bus to Chicago. You were gone for hours, and when I asked Mark, he said you went to a friend's. But your mother found the packed suitcase behind the garage days later. I stopped breathing. How did he know? I found the ticket stub in the trash. You had tried to leave, and then you stayed. I asked myself why for years. I blamed myself. I knew something must have happened, but I think I figured it out eventually. You stayed for us. He was right. I had planned it for months. I was going to move in with a cousin in Chicago, start fresh, get out from under Mark's shadow. I had a job lined up at a hardware store. Even had a spot at a community college if I could swing it. But on the day I was supposed to leave, I found Mom crying in the kitchen. Dad had been laid off again. Mark had wrecked his car. The whole house was a disaster. I saw how tired they looked. And I told myself, not yet. They need me. I unpacked my bag, dumped my ticket in the trash, and pretended I had never planned anything at all. And then I forgot to remember that I had ever dreamed bigger. I read the rest of Dad's letter through blurry eyes. You were always stronger than you thought. That is what scared your brother. You never needed applause. You just needed peace. And I am sorry we never gave you that. I am sorry I never said this. I am proud of you. I always was. That broke something open in me. Something tight and cold that had been living in my chest for 20 years. He knew. All this time, I thought I had been invisible. But he saw me. Maybe not with loud praise. But in his quiet way, he had seen the whole picture. And that secret I had kept, that part of me I buried to keep the family together, it was finally in the open. I had sacrificed my freedom, my future, my sense of self, all to protect a family that never once asked what it cost me. But now I had nothing left to hide. And that is when I decided. It was time the world, and Mark, saw the real me. Not the helper, not the afterthought, Not the shadow. The man built for storms. The next morning, I stood outside the Warner and Sons building again. Same cracked pavement. Same faded sign. But this time, I was not there to sneak in or collect scraps of a story. I was there to claim the truth. I walked in through the front like I owned the place. Because technically, I did. At least, I would soon. I met with a lawyer 2 blocks over. Ruth had already sent me the files. The flash drive was full of everything we needed: embezzlement trails, falsified invoices, even offshore transactions under shell corporations tied back to Mark's social security number. And the kicker? The original will. Grandpa had left a second version, notarized, naming me sole heir of the business. Not Mom. Not Mark. Me. It had been buried in a safety deposit box, one Ruth had access to, just in case anything happened to the original. Ruth never delivered it, because my mother swore it would destroy the family. But the family had already been destroyed. They just buried the pieces under silence. The lawyer said we had a case. A strong one. And we were going to move fast. He told me we could file an injunction by the end of the week. Freeze Mark's access. Begin the process to claim legal ownership. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life. But then the final punch landed. On my way out of the office, my phone buzzed again. It was Emma's school. I picked up, assuming it was about her project or another event. But the voice on the other end? Cold. Measured. Mr. Warner, the principal said, I am calling to inform you there was an incident involving your niece. My stomach dropped. She got into an argument with another student and said something concerning. She told the other child that her dad was a liar, that he stole from her real family. I felt my blood run cold. She mentioned your name. Repeatedly. I apologized, said I would talk to her, said it would not happen again. But when I hung up, I just sat there in my car, the keys still in the ignition. Because that little girl, the one I showed up for when nobody else did, she had finally started to see the truth. And she was watching. I could not back down now. I had to see this through. Not for revenge, but so that one day, if she ever asked me what happened, I could tell her I stood up. I could tell her the truth, every word of it. But what I did not know yet was that Mark had already found out what I was planning. And he was not going down quietly. Mark was waiting outside my apartment when I got home that night, leaning against his sleek black SUV like he was the one in control, wearing that same smug expression he had used our whole lives, part charm, part threat, part you owe me. I did not speak, just walked past him toward the door. Jacob, he said, stepping into my path. We need to talk. No, I replied. You need to listen. His jaw tightened, but I saw it, that flicker of uncertainty, that crack in the performance. I know everything, I said, about the money, the fake invoices, the accounts in Belize, the original will. He scoffed. You're digging up paperwork. It doesn't change anything. You think you're going to swoop in and take it all, just because you've been sitting on your hands for 20 years? No, I said quietly. I'm not taking anything. I'm taking back what you stole. He stepped closer. You think anyone's going to believe you over me? You don't have the presence, the edge. You never did. That used to sting, but not anymore. You're right, I said. I'm not like you. I don't manipulate people. I don't lie to my niece. I don't cash checks with someone else's future. I paused, watching his face. I'm not flashy. I don't need the room to revolve around me. I don't need the applause. I stepped in now, inches from him. But I'm still standing. After everything. And you? I watched his expression change, like he suddenly realized I was not the shadow anymore. You're about to lose the one thing that gave you your identity, I said. And you know what's worse than being invisible? He blinked. Being seen for who you really are. Mark looked like he wanted to swing, to scream, to say something that would put me back in my place. But I just stepped aside and opened the door. And for the first time in my life, he was the one left standing in the hallway. I went inside and locked the door behind me. My hands were steady. My heart was not racing. It felt like something had settled. Not revenge. Not victory. Just truth. But that night, right before I went to bed, one more message came through. An email. From a name I had not seen in years. Mom. Subject line, you went too far. And the moment I opened it, I realized. Mark was just part of the story. She was the one who orchestrated the whole thing. The email was short. Cold. Jacob, you need to stop this before you destroy what little we have left. You may think this is justice, but it is really just bitterness. Mark was always better suited for leadership. That was clear from the start. Please do not embarrass this family any further. No love, no apology, no questions about how I was doing. Just one last push to keep me small. I stared at the screen for a long time, letting the words settle like dust on old furniture. She still saw me as the quiet boy in the background, the helper, the placeholder. But that boy was gone. I hit reply. You already destroyed it. I am not the one who lied, manipulated, and chose a favorite. You decided who mattered. And now I am deciding who I am. I am not bitter. I am done being silent. Jacob. I hit send. I thought I would feel rage or triumph. But what I felt was stillness, like I had been underwater for years, and suddenly I could breathe again. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork, legal calls, meetings with accountants. Mark tried to fight, of course, sent his own lawyers, claimed I was trying to rewrite history. But facts have a way of holding their ground. Ruth's files, the will, the fraud trail, it all held. And when the injunction went through and the court froze his access, I did not celebrate. I just showed up to the Warner & Sons building early one morning, walked into my grandfather's old office, and stood behind that desk for the first time in my life. It was not about power. It was about presence. For once, I was not standing in the wings. I was not waiting to be invited. I was just there, fully. And the best part? I did not need anyone else to clap. Emma visited a week later, her science trophy in hand, glowing like the world had finally shifted in her favor. She ran through the office, wide-eyed, asking if this was mine now. I said ours. Someday, if you want it. She smiled. I think I do. That night, I walked outside, leaned against the hood of my car, and looked up at the sky. No spotlight, no stage, just me. And that was enough. I did not need to be better than Mark. I did not need to outshine anyone. I just needed to stop dimming my own light. And once I did, I realized something no one ever taught me growing up. Being quiet does not mean you are weak. Sometimes, it means you were just waiting until the right moment to speak.